All right, Will Allred, round two, back on the pod. What's up, man? How are you?
Round two, it's good to be back. Appreciate you having me on again.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have gotten the round two. Certainly, probably you could count them on two hands. So I'm stoked to have you. Like we were saying before we recorded, I get a lot of value out of what you are putting out personally on LinkedIn and all across the board around email. So let's help people book some meetings and progress some deals via email today.
Amen. I love it. Let's do it.
Before we do that, I noticed the hat. Are you repping your Tar Heels the day after?
Oh, always. Just
Brutal,
morning today.
brutal. Is it? It's still kind of worth. Like I know you wanted to win, and
Yeah.
it sucks to lose that type of a game, but beating Duke in the Final Four to send Coach K
So
home is like it's all
sending
worth
him
it.
onto his retirement home that's amazing. It's amazing. As any Carolina fan will tell you, to hate like that is to love forever. So it's real good. Um, that said, yeah, the team in, crazy impressive. Like
Yeah,
watching that coach, the way he talks about the team, the way he talks about motivating that team. I'm sure you saw the interview where he's just like fired up.
yeah,
Like I was like, I would run through walls for that man.
yeah. He's a stud. He's gonna be a great coach for a long time. It looks like.
Yeah, I'm pretty thrilled.
That's
Um,
cool.
yep, yep.
Well, you announced some big news on the Lavender front today of bringing on Mr. Morgan J. Ingram, who I doubt anyone listening to this does not know who that is. Bringing him on as an advisor, so just big news. Like I feel like I've been seeing that maybe a few other folks that have come on board to help out, and just like a lot of buzz around Lavender. So, last time we talked, you were on your honeymoon. So I'd love to just like what's been up in the last year or so.
Oh, the good stuff. I mean, as far as Lavender goes, man, it's just been like solid, consistent, accelerating growth, which has been really fun to be a part of. As a team of four, we're continuously impressed with how far we can stretch what it is that we're able to do and how much value we're able to provide. Um, I think since we last talked, we've just taken the product to another level. So we've built out coaching dashboards really focused around like bringing some visibility to what's going on within the inbox. We've built out, continue to just make it easier to write better emails faster. And a big piece of that is like a whole personalization engine attached to the product. So bringing tons of news, events, past encounters with an individual, all with the end goal. Like heck, we even pulled in the entire job board of a company into the inbox with the end goal of being like, how do you turn that into a reason to reach out? How do you turn that into something that's going to start a conversation? And so we're super excited about where we're at, but we know we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's cool, and there's no shortage of people that need the help. Especially like salespeople looking to send better emails. That will never, until email's gone, that need will not go away.
Yeah, well, and as much as people would love to say it's going to die soon, it continues to thrive.
Yeah, totally. Is most of your time spent like, I see on LinkedIn, see on TikTok, which we'll get to, like, is most of your time spent on the marketing side, or are you kind of, a man of many hats as well?
I'm a man of many hats, as
Yeah,
everyone is. When you're a team
yeah,
of four and you're growing as quickly as we are, you kind of have to be.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I'd say I do a lot of stuff on the top of funnel side of the house, right? The TikToks, the conversations. It all kind of boils down to like, I've kind of boiled it down to like one letter, which would be like C. So whether that's like community and engaging within platforms like LinkedIn, doing one-on-one coaching sessions where we get to selfishly, I get to learn about what sales reps are struggling with and dealing with so that we can build better product. But also on like the existing customer front, making sure that they're getting the best utility out of using our product. So
Mm.
yeah, it's all sorts of things going on. Certainly busy.
That's what I was going to ask about you, because I re-looked at your bio today. So you do one-on-one coaching for email with reps for free?
Yeah, I had to hone it back some. It was getting a little unruly, but I do it every Thursday morning, and it's a blast.
Okay.
It's truly one of the highlights of my week. One, because I'm helping folks. Like when I hear back, like response rates go up, and so anecdotally, I feel pretty good about that. But also, it's stellar product research from me. Like it's kind of funny. Folks will get to the end, they're like, "Where's the part where you talk about like why we should be using Lavender?" I'm like, "Use it. It's great. It's free." But I'm actually just using you for product intel.
Yeah.
Because you think about everything that we do, it all kind of ties back to we want to help, and along the way, we're just finding new ways to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about TikTok for a minute.
Let's do it.
What's your strategy there? Like, what's the obviously I know why one would do it, right? It's the primary or one of the primary audiences for people who are likely to probably be SDRs or maybe even AEs, like young mid-20s, and that's kind of like the next wave. But how are you going about creating captivating content on there?
So it's interesting. The way I've been thinking about TikTok is, yes, there's an audience there that's interesting. Yeah. But the other thing that I find really interesting is the notion of pulling that content and moving it to other platforms. So like looking at LinkedIn, you scroll through your feed, it's a lot of text posts. Sometimes there's images, but the things that you kind of remember, right, are the videos. When somebody sits down, you see their face and they're giving some quick advice. I've actually seen that play out live now, going to different events. Now that we're doing some things back in person, where people will be like, "Oh, I saw your TikTok." I'm like, "Oh, do you follow me on TikTok?" Like, "No, I saw it on LinkedIn." And so I think there's like some interesting aspects to not just growing and building a brand on that platform, but what it can also do for other platforms where we're trying to engage, we're trying to break through and help folks in a sea of conversation. TikTok specifically, building an audience there, my thinking has always been the same, which is, what is something that I can produce that is helpful for another sales rep or somebody getting into sales? And sometimes they get weirdly like 11,000 views, and sometimes they get nothing.
Yeah.
But as you probably know from just like building content, it's all about being consistent with it and trying to build a habit around making sure you produce one. I think the biggest challenge has been what to build content around, in the sense that like LinkedIn, you got a little bit more long form to like expand on some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas TikTok, it's like, here's one thing that sucks about your email, and then like that's it, and then you get to like stop. And my inner just like, I don't know, past consultant is like, "No, you need to explain why and like give them all the reasons." And it's like, that's not what this platform is.
Yeah. Yeah, I might need to look at. I've struggled personally on TikTok just to like create that type of like biting, like really to the point type content. I'm similar to you. Like I like to write, I like 45-minute podcasts. So, like the quick like hitter on the video, just like there's so much opportunity. I just haven't quite been able to figure it out.
Well, I think there's a really good like corollary between like cold email and TikTok, in the sense that you're sitting there and there's like, I want to explain more. I want to give them more information. But the way people are going through that and like filtering through that information, they're looking for that quick like hit. It's not necessarily going to like change or impact their life, right? But it's like the way it's organized, the way it's defined, it makes it really easy for someone to be like, "Oh, that's a good idea," right? And then you can take it to a platform like LinkedIn where you expand on it further, or you talk about it in a newsletter, or you can expand on it later. But
Yeah.
the idea is really more to like get the conversation started.
Yeah. You just reminded me, I was actually thinking about you guys the other day, because, and I get this type of question a lot, or like joke with Gong of just like, recording conversations and talk times and things like that as it relates to dating. And I was like, man, I wish Lavender existed for like Bumble, and could be like, could really dial in the answers for, what to be saying in those types of situations, or,
Yeah. Ooh,
texting in a
cringe,
new
buddy.
relationship or something like that.
Yeah. Oh man.
Is that on the product roadmap, or who do I need to talk to?
You talk to Will B. He's ready for it. No, we've actually talked about that some. The idea of like making that experience that is Lavender more pervasive in other forms of writing, and bringing that into areas like mobile, right? Because a lot of people like to engage with email on a phone. It's where we're 8 times more likely to read an email the first time through. We're 3 times more likely to hit send from a computer. But is that because it's more convenient? Is it because writing emails on a phone is kind of annoying? Like, there might be ways that we can help assist in that process that we just haven't gotten to exploring yet.
I love that. And that's, it could be, there could be so many different use cases when you think about going to mobile. I want to transition because we did a little something this morning, I tried to incentivize people with a $12 Venmo, of, asking, asking some questions, email related questions for you to answer. If people want to learn more about, your story and kind of the creation of Lavender, they can check out our first pod. But I want to make this a little bit more tactical for folks, in the spirit of just trying to help people out with the email. So if you're cool with it, I'd love to just kind of like start peppering you with a few.
I love it. Let's do it.
Okay. So the first one I'm going to start off with is Will Taylor. And he asked a great one. At first he was, asking about the future of cold email. And in more specifically, I'll just kind of read some of it, but he's saying, with a growing percentage of workforces becoming millennials, how is that going to change how people interact with email? Will we see more memes? Will email be considered more transactional? Or do we need ways to stand out in a sea of fewer and fewer attention credits in the attention economy?
Yeah, so there's a few things there that are interesting to hit on. One is like the idea of multimedia. And one of the things that always gets in the way of that becoming more popular is like spam filters, and platforms like Outlook, as much as Outlook is a like staple of the enterprise sales world, that is a bit more locked down in what it will show primarily and what goes out there. And so, I think email in general should be more multimedia. I think it should be more interesting to engage with. It's just a matter of making sure that doesn't come at the detriment of some folks not having the same platform experience. But I think overall, our generation and the generation that's coming up is going to want more of that. I think the other thing regarding that experience is that it is going to be more mobile, right?
Yeah.
You were talking about going from SF to Chicago, and that is primarily a mobile exercise, right? I imagine you spend a lot of time on your phone doing your job. And that is something that has historically been kind of like an off-putting idea. I remember when I first like got into work and like there was like sent from iPhone attached to an email, and people would like poo-poo it. It's like, why would you do that? Like, like the idea that like that's like somehow disrespectful to the person is now like laughable. But at the same time, like I think some of these norms are starting to change. One thing that I think will become like very much normal is this idea that like it's not just one channel, but email becomes like the core channel at like the center of it all, sort of like the backbone. Whereas like you can start a conversation on LinkedIn, you can engage with a post, you could like retweet something, a lot of that being more on social, but also like phone calls. And like you see a lot of this stuff starting to become normal today, but I think it's going to like become even more normal as more and more folks start to become not just folks that are clocking in doing their job, but also creators as well within that process and talking about what they're doing. I think that's also becoming much more normal.
How much should people, when we're talking about multimedia, and in this example, it was about memes, and I've seen some folks play that pretty well in emails. How much should folks be thinking about, the not only the person that you're sending it to, but what age range are they in? What type of company are they in, right? Like, Wells Fargo is probably more likely to be an Outlook shop than like this new hot startup that's probably using Gmail, if I were to guess. Like, how much do you think about that type of stuff?
Well, I think about it more as like the bigger an organization gets, the more likely the security protocols are going to be locked down. But I also think about like, just because somebody's older doesn't mean they're not open to like getting a video email.
Yeah.
At the same time, folks might be super annoyed that they get one. I think about my wife and I just got a house here in Atlanta, and like the mortgage broker would send videos, and like, I was like, oh, that's cool. It's cool to see it like permeate throughout. Talking to like my father-in-law, he's like super annoying. And so I think there's more of like a personality element than necessarily like an age thing. I think like statistically it probably will fall along age. But like I went to a gym in Tampa not too long ago, and they sent me like a video message right afterwards to my phone. And I was like, that's actually pretty cool. Like, like it wasn't cold, right? I had like a warm, familiar relationship with them because I'd been there for a class. But like the fact that they would text me like a video, I think that's like kind of neat, right? And then like, but I think a lot of it comes back to this core focus around the other person's experience and like what they want to do and like the context in which they're trying to engage with you, this, that, and the other, right? Like I could see people being annoyed with a mortgage broker sending them video emails because they think of it as like, I'm just trying to, get my mortgage, and like I want it to be like a straightforward process. Whereas like, a gym membership where like you're trying to get to know your fitness instructor, et cetera, like you're naturally on the go in that process. And so meeting you on your phone might make a ton more sense. Whereas like if I got a text message from Lavender, maybe my opinion of that would be a little different than if I got an email from Lavender, right? So like kind of coming back to like, what is the end recipient? How do they want to be engaged? How do they want to experience this? Like I think about one of our other advisors, Kyle Coleman, right? He hasn't been very active on Twitter since like 2020. I know this because he's my demo email every time I show our product. And like, so like it's clear he's not trying to be engaged with through that channel. Versus like you see him active on LinkedIn, and like one of the things he'll say is, I respond to every email. So he's like literally signaling to the market, this is the way to communicate with me. And so like it's obvious where I'm gonna like put my preference when I'm doing outreach to someone like that.
Yeah, I think that's a very thoughtful response. I want to go to one of my favorite people, also a former podcast guest, Maria Bras. And this could go in a lot of different ways, but she wants to know your favorite call to actions and subject lines in cold emails right now.
All right, so let's start with call to actions.
Okay.
There's two things I want to point out. One, the biggest annoying thing I see, so like, y'all have done a great job at getting people away from asking for time, right? Which you think about from like a workflow perspective. I'm going through my inbox, trying to respond to things. I'm not trying to jump to my calendar, schedule things. I'm just trying to reply. So like, great. Next thing we have to do now is inform people, stop like muddying up the ask. Like it can't be what you do plus, what you want. It should just be what you want. And so thinking about the CTA as like a call to conversation, what do you think? Worth a chat? Want to check it out? Is that a challenge for you? They're very easy questions to answer, but it's not about, would you be open to seeing how we've increased other software company like Eos over reply rate by 2x, right? That's where it gets like long, wordy, and it's not brief at all, right? It's just about like a short, simple ask. The other thing that I like to point out is you can get the same amount of response asking 0 questions as you can 1 question. What that means is you have to lean into tonality. So things like curious if this resonates. That's a sentence, but you're sort of like invoking them to respond. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if this sounds helpful, let's connect. Like the tonality of that is very much so like, I want you to reply to me, but I'm not asking you anything. And so it's another interesting way that you can approach a quote CTA without having a question.
I love that. Before you jump to subject lines, I got to just get a quick rant in here. And I ranted about this on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago, but can people stop with the fake, like double negative Chris Voss move? Like I get people hit me up on it. It happens all the time on a LinkedIn DM. People like want to come on the podcast or want advice or something, but they ask it in such a weird way. It's like, would you be like ridiculously opposed to the thought of potentially me coming on your podcast? And like, can you just ask like, what, like, hey, I'd love to come on your podcast. Here's what I talk about. What do you think? Like what you just said, that is way, like, I don't want to try to be tricked into me saying, do I say yes or no to this question? I just feel like when everyone knows a tactic, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. And so it might work if you're reaching out to some industry that's never heard of Chris, right? Like if you're reaching out to nursing homes and they're like super non-active on LinkedIn, they don't read, FBI negotiation books, like maybe that's like killer. At the same time, if I'm reaching out to a sales VP and I say like all of what you just said, like they're going to roll their eyes and be like, what in the Chris Voss hell was that? Now I have seen it where it's like, opposed to learning more ? Where like you're kind of tactfully using it.
Yeah, that's better.
But when you overwhelm it, I agree. It just shows it's not natural. It's not how you would actually say it in conversation. I think the easiest thing that I could tell somebody to do is write like you would talk, like talking to not necessarily like a friend, but maybe a friend of a friend, where you're still going to be professional, but you're not going to like embarrass your friend by sounding like a robot. And then, after you've gotten your ideas out on paper, chop it up, because you're going to use run-on sentences. You're going to, be weirdly verbose, I can speak, and like hone that down to a more simple level, and you'll find that those emails just are going to do better. Yep.
Well, thanks for letting me kind of get my anger out there. What about on the subject line piece?
All right, subject lines. So I subscribe to this belief. I've seen other folks talk about it as well, like J-Bay talks about it as like just boring subject lines. I love it because like that's exactly what you're trying to do. I refer to it as internal camouflage. And internal, the camouflage aspect of it, it's not meant to be deceptive. It's meant to blend in. It's meant to feel like an internal email. And so what a subject line should be is 2 words assigned back to the topic that you want to talk to them about, right? Like if I'm trying to talk to you about, if like the reason I'm reaching out is like they're hiring sales reps and I want to know how they're thinking about ramp, specifically ramp as it comes to email, I'll literally just say email ramp as my subject line. And it'll be super simple, 2 words. Now, if they have familiarity with the brand, say they're inbound or it's like a follow-up from a demo or something like that, I'm going to put the name of my company first, and then I'm going to do whatever I was going to do after. Right. So like
Yep.
if I do a coaching call with, a team, I would say, Lavender coaching follow-up. Whereas like it's very easy for them to dissect through their inbox. But when it comes to cold emails, it's easier to just like speak to a specific topic, and they'll be like, that topic's either relevant or not relevant, or it sounds close enough to relevant, they'll open it. And so it's like, go ahead.
This is maybe like extremely tactical, but do you capitalize both of the first letters in both of those two words?
I do. And that's only just because that's what our data tells us to do. So it's, I think the formal word for it is like title case. But instead of like lowercase. That said, some other things that like I see folks do, it'll be, including punctuation. I don't do that. I don't include any numbers. I try to stay away from like adjectives, verbs, like writing emails versus just like sales email. Or for the adjective side, like better emails. Like that kind of has like this tone of like, maybe that's marketing. And then like, that's what I'm trying to avoid versus it just saying sales copy.
Yep. Love that. And no emojis in there, I'm guessing.
I don't hate emojis, but it's one of those things I don't see a lot of folks do internally. And so it's one of those things I stray away from, because we think about the process of reading email. Email is essentially a categorization exercise. It's not, people don't read email for comprehension. They read email to just categorize it really quickly. The average reading time is 11 seconds. And so when they see those emojis, you start to run the risk of like an improper categorization of like, is this automated, marketing material, or is this just somebody trying to have a conversation?
I love it. We've got a few other ones that I really liked, other good questions that I want to get your way. So Nate wanted to know, what is the best cold email that Will ever received and why? Or if it's not ever, maybe recently, or one that you've replied to.
It's a good story. So there was a stretch of time where we were looking for a sales intern. And instead of having like a formal application process, I asked people to email me. And I wanted to see if they can cold email me, right? It was like, sell me Lavender. This one guy, Logan, mind you, actually, I'll save the detail for after. So Logan shoots me an email. And now I've set up a process in my head. I'm going to ignore the first email. They don't follow up, they're not going to be a very good seller. And so I ignore the first email. First email was quite wonderful. Clearly had taken like one of the frameworks I'd posted online and like, to a T, nailed it. Instead of like sending a bump email or anything like that, he crafted like a story of like a reason to reach out, sort of taking from how I talk about it, and sent it to me via LinkedIn on a Saturday. He had read somewhere that like I turned off my notifications for email on the weekend, particularly on Saturdays. So he sent it to me over LinkedIn and like sent this note of like, hey, given, you're bringing on new sales reps, and you're probably thinking about the following thing, I thought you'd find this quick demo like super informative. And he like recorded a Loom video of like walking through the product, showcasing how he'd write an email for the company, and like, here's how the product fits in. And like, like thinking about like pattern breaks, best practices, I'm like, that is just like the thoughtfulness that you'd actually want to have come on board. It's funny because like it ended up not working out. The guy, so like we were ready to like make this happen. He was looking for something a little bit more full-time. And the reason was because he had just graduated high school. And
Oh,
yeah, he had just graduated high school, and like I was like, hell, dude, if I had the budget to bring you in full time, I totally would. Like I'm thinking back to like Jed Morrow over at Panda Doc, where he
yeah,
jumped straight into sales. And I'm like, this kid's like onto something, crushing it, spectacular. I connected him with a few folks, and he ultimately decided to go back, not to like formal university, but he wanted to go like dig into learning how to code.
oh,
Um,
cool,
he was like, just from talking to y'all, I think one of the things that I want to do is like get into entrepreneurship. And one of the
cool.
things I want to be able to do is like code as part of that. And I was like, you got to do you, man. But at the same time, like, damn. Yeah.
Man, that you just already know, like 10 years from now, like wherever Logan's at, like he's gonna
I'm
be
going to be
doing some
working
cool
for
shit.
him, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. That's what I'm thinking too. That's amazing. Shout out to Logan. That's a great best email story. We've got one or two others I want to get to. Anton asked, what is the adequate sample size of an email sequence when you're thinking about judging its effectiveness?
So there's like a math answer to this where you've got to look at like the total population of individuals that like you could potentially be reaching out to, and do you have an adequate sample? The way that I think about it is you get to like 100
Mm-hmm.
of like a particular type of email, and you start to have a directional data set. You get to 1,000, you've got to a pretty like indicative data set of what's going on. And it's actually like one of the reasons that we're so adamant about pushing like for team adoption, not just individual rep adoption, is because like when you start to pair the learnings across all of those emails, you start to get a much more reliable understanding of what's going on and like why things work. And that that is something that like um is hard, because it's like you want to be like, oh, um yeah, it's good in the sense that like people understand like some interesting ways that they could go test stuff. Like our product's doing like some mathematics gymnastics on the back end where we're making recommendations based on their data, also our data. One of the things that folks get like, I wouldn't say frustrated, they ask questions about is like, my little graph says like 3-word subject lines. You're telling me to use 2. I'm like, yeah, you should keep using 3 if you see that in your data. But at the same time, if you're going to run an experiment, if you're going to test something, 2's the number, right?
Yeah.
Because our data is showcasing that you could actually see this percentage increase in your response rate by just changing that one variable.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of education there that we're still working our way through. But I think the easy is like to use those multiples of 10, but 100 to 1,000. And like as you get to 1,000, just feel more confident in what you put out there.
Yep. Love it. All right, the last one that I've got, and then we'll get to some rapid fires to close us out. And we were talking a little bit about personalization earlier in terms of sending memes or not and stuff like that. There's a question around, if there's any data as it relates to, how to, message people based on like their disc profiles or any sort of like, I guess personality test or however you might define that. Anything that you know about that?
Yeah. It's interesting because, one of the things that we just built out into the product is personality aspect. So like we can showcase that to you. It's like, here's how this person processes information. They're more oriented towards people, or they're more process oriented. Right now, there's not like a hard and fast rule that we've established towards like value proposition or like ways that you should position the brand. But like my advice when it comes to those personality profilings is to recognize that they are more inclined to, like, say, reaching out to me, right? I'm more inclined to be thinking about, what people across my team, how, the people within my organization are going to use it. I'm very people oriented. And so that's going to be where I go first when it comes to thinking through a decision. Now people like my co-founder who are more like process and like more like what we call like a mover, right? Sort of like in disc, like a hard D. Like where he likes to go is like, yeah, explain to me that it's going to be easy. Explain to me what the process is, and I want to make sure I understand that it's straightforward. If it's not, that's something else. But at the same time, like that would be like where I would try to go.
And how do you? I mean, I don't know if this is just giving away your secret sauce or what, but how do you know what those are for people?
Yeah, so this is a pretty well researched area. So fortunately, I'm not like spilling any trade secrets, right? It's been published about within multiple academic journals. But the idea is, you know, when you're online, when you're using different services, when you're writing, when you're engaging, you're creating a level of digital exhaust that can be used to, you know, start to string together some assumptions around how you view and see the world around you. So yeah, and like folks will sort of like, it's interesting, right? Because people will be like, oh, I don't want you to know that. And then like their thought is like the answer is to like have the absence of information, but then they don't realize that if you think about the absence of information, it's in and of itself information. And so it's not like something you're gonna like get around. It's just like it is what it is, and it's designed to actually, you know, help make decisions more satisfying. Like that's one of the key findings that folks have found from personality-based like targeting and segmentation is that the ultimate decisions that consumers make, they're ultimately more satisfied about. Think about if you do like a geographic segmentation of like different personality characteristics and where they live. Well, they don't make, people don't decide to live in New York City because they're extroverted, but they're more likely to be happy in New York City if they're extroverted.
Got you. That makes sense. I love how every time we talk or every time I check out one of your things, I just get like 1% smarter. So that's, if nothing else, I learned, I feel like I'm always learning, and you've always got good, like you've got hard data to back things up, and I appreciate that.
Well, I am 1% more flattered, so thank you.
All right, let's first of all, thanks for answering those questions. I hope the folks that asked them found that helpful. Someone's going to get a $12 Venmo, which will buy them a Chipotle bowl this week. Before we wrap up, let's hit a couple rapid fires because hey, things have I don't even know if I was asking these same questions a year ago, so probably not. First up, we're big learners on this podcast. We love talking books. Curious if there's anything, anything that stands out in your whole, life, but even in particular in the last year or so that's really stood out to you that you really liked. Any topic is fair game.
I know. It's interesting. I tend to go back towards this book over here. It's got like a giant rip in it, but Traction, which goes over the power law distribution for like startups to recognize and adapt to, which is like, you've probably heard like 20% of your actions drive like 80% of your results. It's sort of the exact same mindset. And so thinking about how we've grown Lavender, how we've thought about like taking what our brand strategy is and bring it to life. A book like this is super helpful in thinking through it. That said, I don't know if I'd say like just read Andy Paul's new book.
Oh yeah, nice.
Sell Without Selling Out. Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I picked it up and I couldn't put it down because I was just like, this is what it actually means to sell. I love it. So that said, I'm trying to venture outside of like the world of sales and like marketing, etc. Curious if you have a book recommendation for me.
When you say that, do you mean like you're trying to get into a fiction book, or like what are we, like what are we trying to get into? Biography? Like what's happening here?
Let's do fiction, because I find that when I do a fiction book, it helps me get back into reading more. and then reading more enables me to write more.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, my COVID like guilty pleasure new habit was that I read all the Harry Potter books for the first time ever. And I wasn't really a big fiction guy, and then I read those. I'm like, oh, fiction's kind of sweet, and so
Yeah.
I've gotten into a little bit of a tear. I never watched the movies or read the books growing up, which maybe is a whole nother topic. But I love those.
Is that why you are who you are?
That is part of it. Yeah, let's see. I mean, Stephen Pressfield has a few great ones. He's got some nonfiction as well. That's really good. I mean, have you read the Harry Potters? If not, you got to start there. That'll take you.
I mean,
quite some time.
I'm taking notes, so I
Okay,
got Harry
okay.
Potter at the top.
It's a good getaway from what I'm sure can be very long and stressful days as an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Where you're just like in a completely different world. So we'll stick with that.
I like that, yeah, because I don't know, I've been getting a little burnt out on the business books recently, so I'm trying to switch it up.
Yeah. All right, so back to you. Top podcasts, YouTube's, people on LinkedIn maybe that aren't as recognizable if you're gonna drop some of those, but other ways that you've been learning recently.
Yes, I've got a podcast where it's called Nudge, and it is you can go to nudgepodcast.com, and it is like a lot of like behavioral science applied to specific marketing. Fantastic.
Love it. I'll have to check that one out. What's going on in the headphones music wise?
So headphones music wise, recently, been so busy that I've been crushing a lot more like house music, like EDM type stuff, just as like background. Helps me sort of like stay focused on tasks. It's like Odessa, for example, would be like a good one, or Rufus Del Sol. On the flip side of that, like I've always been like just sort of like into like alternative music, stuff like that, like Arctic Monkeys, etc.
Nice. What's something that you like to do, outside of work as kind of like a way to recharge, decompress from everything that's going on?
Yeah, man. I'll share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Oh, wait, disabled. You gotta enable it for me.
Hold up. All right. How about now?
All right. So for those listening, you can't see it, but we've got a nice picture of Mount Rainier here. So my wife and I are training to go get to the top of that thing.
Wow.
So that's one piece. But like outside of work, I'm a normal human being like everybody else. I like to go out to meals and hang out with friends, etc.
Let's talk about the training for a second. What does that entail?
The training, man, it has been something that we are getting better about. It's a lot of just like odd. It's a lot of like odd mix of like strength and endurance. Because like you've got to carry like a 40-pound like thing on your back, so it's like a lot of lunges with like heavy weights in your hands, and then it's a lot of like cardio exercise, like runs for long distances. So actually, like after this, I'm gonna hop in the car and we're going to a Barry's class.
Nice.
Which we've done a few times now. It's eye-opening that we've got some work to do.
Those will kick your ass, no doubt about it. How long is that supposed to take, the hike?
It's like a 4-day turnaround. So day one, you show up and you just do like a gear check. Day two, you do like on mountain training. So they teach you like how to use your ice axe and how to stop yourself if you like fall down a crevasse or whatever. Also some like walking techniques and stuff. Then day 3, you walk up to base camp, and day 4, you wake up at basically the middle of the night, go to the summit, and then you come back down. So we tried to do this a few years back, That's why I know all of the everything that happens along the way. But we got snowed out at about like 11,000 feet, and so we had to turn back.
No kidding.
Yeah, well, it turns out trying to climb a mountain in September is like not that smart. So this year we're doing it in June when it's a little sunnier.
Yeah, that's good. I was gonna say I'd be surprised if that was still going on in June.
Exactly.
That's awesome. It's funny because I've got myself a hiking challenge this year as well,
Oh,
which
sweet.
is very random, but it's this event called 29029 where you
Is
hike.
that the Jesse Eisner?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes, dude. That's so much fun.
So we're probably got similar workouts going on where it's like the running and throw a kettlebell or whatever in the backpack and
Stairmasters,
walk
man.
around. Yeah, Stairmaster.
Dude, it's get the this will help because like regardless, go on Amazon, get one of those like weighted vests.
Oh yeah.
It just like kickstarts that like leg strength real fast.
Yeah. I know a couple buddies that swear by those. So that's on my to buy list here for Chicago because it's
Yeah.
flat as hell here. So I need
I
the
feel
help.
I feel bad for the guy who has to deliver it because he's like picking up a normal sized box and it's like 25 pounds.
That's hilarious. My last thing before we wrap up, who do you want to see come next on the Millennial Sales Podcast?
Oh, um, oh man, it's a good question. I mean, I think you and my co-founder would have an awesome conversation.
I have not had Will be on.
He's spent some time in the trenches of sales, and I think you would have a great conversation with him.
Let's get that going.
Yeah, he's told me some like war stories like entrepreneurship and sales, and I'm like, dude, you've got stories.
Dude, kind of disrespectful of me to have Will A on twice before I even had Will B on once. That's kind of messed up, honestly.
No, it's and I'm trying to think of like who else would be a killer person to bring on. Yeah, part of me wonders if you could get the host of the Nudge podcast, Philip Agnew, to come on because he's super just like love listening to his podcast. The way he's like taken these like heady science topics and like applied them to real world things, and so sort of getting him out of his marketing world and talking about like sales would be super fun.
Okay, well he's on my prospecting list now. I appreciate. I'll shoot him a good cold email.
I love it.
Well, obviously, before I let you go, I gotta recommend for everyone to they this is not a paid ad, but they try out Lavender for free. They check out your profile on LinkedIn, on TikTok. You're posting good shit every single day. You've got a newsletter now that's going out once a week. A bunch of different events, probably like webinars and maybe some in-person stuff coming up. So you can let me know and let the audience know like anywhere else that they can reach out to you, but I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is like the easiest way. Within that like about section of my profile, I've listed out like a few ways that they can follow along and engage. And like obviously if I'm doing any events or anything like that, it gets published there as well. So that's definitely a good place to start.
Will, in parentheses, the email guy, Allred.
Oh, appreciate
I love it. I appreciate you coming on, man. This is great.
Appreciate you bringing me back.